Today's episode is brought to you by Art Street Collective. Coloring is a great way to decompress and de-stress. Art Street Collective artists have several coloring books available, from whimsical and cartoonish to Celtic knots and kaleidoscopes. Visit the Art Street Collective website to see all the books available at artstreetcollective.com. Thank you so much, Art Street Collective. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 78 of the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today we're talking about teaching children to sew with my guest, Annabel Wrigley. Annabel Wrigley is an Australian mom, author, and designer living in rural Virginia. She owns Little Pincushion Studio, a space where she teaches children everything they need to know in order to go forth and conquer the world of sewing and creating. When she's not teaching, she's working on her We Love to Sew series of books published by C&C Publishing. She also teaches classes on Creative Bug and designs fabric for Wyndham Fabrics. Annabel Wrigley, welcome.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great talking to you. So I'm going to talk a little bit first. I want to talk a little bit first about your background. You are not originally from Virginia. We'll hear your accent, so you give yourself away. You came to Virginia, where you live now, from Sydney, Australia, a little over a decade ago. What prompted that move?
It was about, how old's my son now? He's 16. So it was about 14 years ago, and my husband had an opportunity for a job over here, and I had two small children. My son was 2 and my daughter was just a baby. And we just thought we'd come over and have an adventure while we could and while the kids were young, and that it would only be a couple of years. And 14 years later, we're still here. So it's all good. Yeah.
What kind of work does he do?
He works in IT.
I see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you weren't expecting to stay.
Was
it a big transition? Like, do you remember that first year? I mean, it's hard to move anywhere with an infant and a toddler, I'm assuming, but do you remember the transition those first few years and what that was like?
It was really hard. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be, for sure. It was a really different area. I'm from the northern beaches of Sydney, and it was difficult because I didn't have any family, and I thought that I would be totally fine and I'd make all these friends, and it was a lot harder than I thought. And it was also difficult to not be, working as much and have my hands, on the sewing machine all the time. It was kind of difficult. And I also, in the early years, I was not allowed to work in the United States, so that made it kind of the transition really hard, because I'm quite a busy person, so I like to always be working and making. So it was hard. Had you been to the US before just to visit? I had been to the US to visit and toured around, but I had not been to Virginia before. But my husband had, and we had friends in the area, so we thought it was the perfect place to settle. And we love the little town that we live in. It's very quiet and wonderful, but it took a few years definitely to be able to feel settled, for sure.
Yeah, I imagine. And do you go back to Sydney frequently?
We go back. I just got back, actually, but we generally go back every couple of years, and or my husband will take one child or I'll take one child. It's quite a big trip to do regularly, but
right.
But my entire family is back there, so I do love to go back and see them.
Yeah, I imagine so. So you were trained as a nurse, is that right?
Right. Yes, I was. I went to nursing school straight out of high school, and then I ended up in psychiatric nursing, and I did that for several years.
What does that mean, psychiatric nursing?
It means that I worked with people that have mental illness, and I worked on a team that was out in the community visiting them, and we'd go around in the car and visit them in their group homes or in their apartments and administer medication and counsel them and that kind of thing. So I did that for several years, actually. Yep.
Okay, and this was while you were in Sydney?
This is while I was in Sydney, yeah.
Right. And
So
I'm wondering what drew you to that. That sounds like it takes a very special kind of person, I feel like, to have the level of compassion and patience and things to do that sort of work.
I loved it. I found it really fascinating. Just talking to people and talking about their experiences and really sort of getting in there with the counselling. I really enjoyed it. And, in Australia at that time there was a really big push to bring a lot of people out of the institutions and back out into the community. So it was really interesting thing to be a part of. A lot of these people that were coming out of prison, coming into the community and getting them set up and counselling them and learning about their lives and helping. I mean, I really loved it. It was quite a stressful job, I won't lie, but I did really love it until I had my son. And that was when I went on maternity leave, and I just realised that the adrenaline rush of the constant kind of unpredictability and a little element of danger, which was really fun when I didn't have kids, all of a sudden became something that I just didn't want when I had kids. So that's when I had a massive career change, and I didn't go back to nursing after that.
Yeah.
As much as I loved it.
I can totally understand that. I think I used to be a teacher, and I taught in the inner city for a bunch of years. And I understand what you're talking about that sense of adrenaline rush, but also a little bit of sense of danger.
Right.
But also it's very exhausting. Even though it's really important work and good work, and maybe work you were really suited to, somehow when life changes, it doesn't fit again.
Yeah, it was almost like I would come home in the evening and my husband would know that I would just not want to talk for a couple of hours.
Right.
Because, you've gone through so much talking and so much stress and it's exhausting, and you come home and you need to sort of kind of release, and just sit quietly for a couple of hours. And even though that was wonderful when I didn't have kids, it was just I couldn't put my energy into that anymore once I had him. It was like some weird creative shift happened in my life. And yeah.
I think you're not alone in that feeling. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to once they become a mother. And but do you feel like there's some elements of that period of your life that do carry over? And we'll talk obviously more about what you're doing now and the new career you've built. But are there things like strains that you recognize that you say, oh, I learned that then?
I really do. I don't want to say that I'm always analysing people at all, but I do feel that it helps me. I do feel that it helps me in my relationship with the children that I teach, and kind of have an understanding of a lot of them and what they go through on a day-to-day basis. Because I see these children for every single week. Sometimes I see them for years. So in that way, I think it's been really good to have that background, actually.
Yeah, and you see them, and we'll talk about this, but you teach after school, sewing classes. And so I used to take art classes as a kid, and my kids take after school sewing classes. And so you're seeing them, in kind of a relaxed state. In other words, there's no grades, nothing's due, there's not a real high stake situation. And I know from taking many art classes myself that sometimes during art class, when you're all focusing and working on your own things, is when like the best conversations come out, because,
absolutely.
It's almost as though it's not like anonymous, but it's almost, it almost has that same feeling of like, you can just talk and everybody's looking down and focusing. So you probably are privy to some good conversations there.
Yeah, and they know, and the girls know that that what we talk about during class is completely confidential, and that it's a very safe place to speak.
How do they know that? Is that something that you express?
I tell them that. So it's a safe place. Nobody talks about other people, and no one's allowed to say anything mean about other people. But sometimes the girls will come and they will have developed relationships with each other, even though they're all from different schools and different walks of life. And sometimes someone will start talking about something and they'll feel comfortable enough to, have that discussion, and they know that it's really safe. But they also do know that if they tell me something that I feel puts them at risk in any way, or that I think is something that their mother really needs to know, then I will tell their mother. But that's only they know that. I make that really clear to the kids.
And
that's only happened once. That's only happened one time where I've had to go to a mum and say, I'm a little bit concerned about this particular thing. So.
Right. But having that other adult in your life, who you can trust and who is a good listener is so important for kids. So that's a great role to
We
fill.
have there's a lot of tears in the back room that happen here. There's a lot, there'll be a lot of, are you all right? Do you need to go into the back room? And they'll be like, yes. And there's a lot of like teary conversations in the back room. But, I love that. And I'm really thankful for the relationship I've developed with these children that come to me. So in that way, sometimes when I have new parents contact me, they'll ask me to tell them all about what happens in class and how structured it is and how it works. And I kind of have to sort of sometimes say it has become a bit of a sewing circle. So think of it that way. It's relationships are formed, skills are learnt. There's a lot of conversation. And I love that we're part sewing circle and then we're part, we're learning at the same time. So
absolutely.
It's really important to me.
That's wonderful. And I think for people who are considering maybe starting to teach sewing classes to children in their own areas, I think that's really inspiring to hear how you set the tone and that you do sort of encourage or allow for that opening up and relationship development and trust in the class, that you expect it to be more than just, and now we're going to sew the front to the back.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to know about them and they want to know about me, and we're together every single week. So I love that connection. I just think it's really wonderful. I love all those kids.
That's great. And you have 2 children of your own, which we referred to already, Ruby and Oliver. And how old are they now?
Oliver is 16. He's almost 17 and he will be a senior this year. And Ruby is 14 and she will be starting high school this year. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, they're growing up. So, so your grandmother sewed, but you didn't really sew as a child. Is that right?
I didn't. I was a little bit younger than my sisters, and so they learned how to sew from her. I was also a little bit naughtier than my sisters, and I kind of watched with interest, but I wasn't sort of I didn't gravitate towards it like they did at an early age. I liked to make things, and I was really intrigued by fabric and color, but it wasn't something that, I was really encouraged into. And so I didn't really get the love of it until later. But I do, I think about her and I really wish that we had had that sewing time together when she was alive. But she did. She was an amazing seamstress. She made all the prom dresses. She was great.
And did your mom sew?
My mum sewed a little, but I wouldn't say I really remember her sewing much when I was a child. No.
My mom doesn't sew at all. And actually my grandmother didn't sew either. And so there wasn't anybody to teach me. It was just me learning in home ec in 8th grade. So yeah. So there is
we did a lot of tapestry together, with a lot of cross stitch. She would spend time working on that with me, but not so much sewing as much.
Okay. And so you got much more into sewing when you became a mom, when Oliver was born. And then with Ruby, teaching her to sew when she was ready to learn. So, so how did that sort of, just working with your own children, how did that lead to a business in teaching children to sew? Like, how did you go from just doing that at home for fun to saying, okay, I'm going to start teaching other people from outside of my family?
Right. Well, it really all goes back to when I had Oliver, and my friend came over with her baby, and her baby had the cutest hat I'd ever seen on. And I said, oh, that hat, I love that hat. She said, oh, it's by some designer, and it was, a $200 hat. And I thought, well, I'm not going to pay that for that hat. I'm going to see if I can work out how to make that hat. So I got some felt and a stapler, and I stapled the whole thing together, and I gave it to my mother-in-law because she was amazing at sewing. And I said, can you teach me how to make this? So we made a pattern. I got a sewing machine, and she taught me how to make it. So I made a few for him, and then, people asked me to make them for their kids. So I made some more, and then it snowballed, and I started selling them at markets and shops. And then I started making bags and baby clothes, and I sort of taught myself. And then I got a sewing helper and a cutter and a pattern maker, and I started this little clothing label in Sydney. And
what was that? What was that called?
It was called Baby Olive. And then when I started doing some older children's things, I changed the name to Olive and Friends. And it was really very market-based. Handmade markets are really big in Australia. And so I would go and sell out every single time. And I'd kind of gotten to this point where it was getting really big, and it was scaring me a little bit. And that was when the opportunity had come up for us to move here. So I kind of put the business to sleep and moved over here.
When you say it was scaring you, what was frightening about that?
It was growing so fast that I had to start thinking about, I think it's probably a similar situation here where a lot of manufacturing started to go offshore. Not as many things were being made in Australia anymore. And a lot of the mills had closed down, and the factories, and there were a lot of factory workers around that were looking for work. But I was going to need to start having larger quantities made, and I was going to have to start thinking about offshore manufacture. And I was just not ready for that yet because it happened so fast. I was like, and by that time I had another baby, and I thought, okay, well, we'll go away for a couple of years and I'll just really think about what I want. And then when I come back, I'll pick it up again and we'll see what happens,
Mm-hmm.
So we moved over here and I started sewing a lot, and I would just sew for friends because I needed to keep doing it. And I would sew clothes for Ruby when she was a baby, and I couldn't legally work, so I wasn't sewing as a business.
And just to clarify, that was because you didn't have a visa.
I didn't have a work visa yet
right, okay.
at that time. My husband was here on a specialist visa, so I didn't have a work visa yet. And so then it wasn't until sort of years later, and Ruby was maybe 7, that I started teaching her, and I had gotten my work permit by then. And she would watch me sewing. I had a room set up, and she was wearing all my clothes that I was making, and she was interested. She was kind of wondering what was going on and could she try it. So I started teaching her, and then I started teaching a couple of her friends. And then I started it. I did a brief stint teaching at another place, but I really realized I was better working for myself.
And why is that? You just wanted to do it from home, or was there another reason?
I needed more control of what I was teaching. I needed to have control of how many students I had. I needed to be able to build my own curriculum. I knew that I needed to do it myself, that I could do it exactly how I wanted it myself. So that's how I taught at another place for a very short period of time, but then I moved to the front room of my house. I live in a little cottage, but we carved out a space and I set up a classroom, and the numbers just really grew from word of mouth. And from there, then we had this garage that had a mud floor and it was not big enough for a car. So my husband, the fantastic handyman, decided, let's convert it. So we converted it into my studio, and that became my studio at home for a while. And then it's just like a lot of things, it just really grew and grew and grew, and I grew out of it. So I'm in I don't know what number studio I'm in now, maybe number 4. And I'm looking forward to moving to an even bigger one pretty soon.
So when you're those first classes back then, they were after school classes or weekends? Yes. After school?
After school and weekends.
Okay. And was Ruby in all of them, or
Ruby was in most of them. That was when she really enjoyed being very involved in it. She's kind of, now she's 14, she's not as into it. She used to be my assistant for every class, but she did that for so many years. I'm not surprised she's a bit burnt out from it.
Sure, yeah.
But now I have my students that started with me 7 years ago and now my assistants. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's worked
amazing.
Out well.
Yeah. They've grown up with you. Okay. Yeah. So at what point did you, what was the breaking point when you felt like, you know what, we should really move out of the house?
When the breaking point was when the lines between my home life and my work life became very blurred, and the fact that children had to go into my house to use the bathroom, that was another thing as well.
Right.
But there was no home life for me. It was work all the time, and I felt like I had built up enough clientele that I could do it, and I had just written my first book. And I felt like it was the perfect time because I had that book behind me, almost to give me that credibility.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes a book does that for you emotionally, like besides any sort of financial arrangement or whatever, just knowing that you've written this book, it's like, well, this is actually a business now because I wrote a book.
Right. Yeah. And I started to think of it more, less of a hobby and more of a business. And that's when I knew that it was time to move somewhere and just really make it a business, like really go for it.
I want to take a quick break here to hear a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Lyric Kennard. I'm a member of the Art Street Collective, a collection of amazing artists. Most of us work in textiles. We are together in one place on the internet so that you can come see our studios, browse our galleries, take our workshops, buy our art supplies, and generally enjoy a fabulous art experience from the comfort of your own home.
Right. And how many of you are there right now?
I would have to count. Let me see. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 of us, and we are from coast to coast. So have you ever been to a really great open artist studio place?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's one here in Raleigh where I live. I recently went through the Arts District in Asheville, North Carolina, which was amazing. So you just wander from place to place, sometimes in an old rat's maze of a warehouse or from building to building, and you can meet and see such a myriad of artists and all the different work that they do. And it's such a wonderful thing to do, but we don't always have time to get out of our house and do that, right? So I love that you can do that virtually on the web.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. And if people want to come and check it out, where should they go?
The website is artstreetcollective.com. We have a bookstore. Most of us have publications, usually in the textile art or quilt world. Instructional DVDs. Jamie Fingal has a fabulous coloring book that you're going to love it if you're a sewist at all. We have art supplies on our various websites. We list our workshops together, and you can also see links to the tutorials on each of our websites. All of us are committed to sharing what we do with our audiences and promoting the art of sewing, promoting the art, promoting textiles as a medium.
Thank you so much, Art Street Collective. And now back to my chat with Annabel. And I'm going to ask 2 really boring questions, and if you don't want to answer them, that's okay. But one of them is around insurance. Gosh, that's very boring. I'm sorry, but I feel like I'm very into risk management. So having little kids come into my house and use sewing machines, that could potentially hurt them. Did you have any? Did you have to get a new insurance policy or anything?
I worked with my insurance company at that time to sort of write that into my policy.
Okay.
So I was always really worried. I was like, do I need to have waivers? Should I have a waiver?
Right. Okay.
A lot of people do have waivers. In my case, my insurance company said I didn't need to have one, but that I was completely covered through my insurance. I think it's a good idea. Firstly, you need to, if you're going to teach from home, you definitely need to look at the town rules regarding operating a home-based business, because my class numbers were restricted because of the laws of the area that I work in. So I think that's really important for anyone who's thinking about a home-based business where people will come to your home, depending on, how residential your area is. And also it's the first thing you need to do is really check with your insurance company and make sure that you're covered for any kind of accidents.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Yeah,
you don't want to get in trouble and you don't want to put your family's financial situation at risk should something,
totally.
God forbid, happen and, you should get sued or something like that. So
I know, it's my worst nightmare.
it
It's my
is.
worst,
And,
yeah.
I mean, it could happen. Hey, someone could slip on your walkway, I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be with a sewing machine, but sewing machines are particularly in irons, I mean, and scissors and rotary cutter. I mean, there's just a lot, right? That could happen.
We don't use rotary cutters in here at all. I will not. I mean, I use them, but the children are not allowed to touch them. And I don't really, even the older girls, I'm not okay with it. So that's always been my big fear is rotary cutters and children.
Yeah. Yeah, and rightfully so. And and my other question was around sort of incorporation. So did you at some point incorporate, and what kind of like corporate structure did you become? Did you choose to be an LLC or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I became an LLC.
Okay.
Yes, and that was something that only happened in the last year,
Oh.
even though it was something that was on my to-do list for a really long time, and I regret that I didn't do it sooner. And it was just, it's really hard when you're the only person who runs your business and it's always there. It's like, oh, if I get a minute, I've got to get that done. I've really got to get that done. I've really, really got to get that done. And it wasn't until somebody did hurt themselves with a sewing machine that I was like, I did it the same day. And it was so easy and I should have done it sooner.
Right.
But,
and you should have done it sooner just for liability issues so that
absolutely.
you stop being personally liable for what happens.
100%.
Okay.
And that's like probably my biggest regret, or my only regret in setting up a business by myself and really learning as I go, is that I needed to become an LLC straight away.
Okay.
So
That is such good advice. And thank you for answering my boring questions, because
That's
although
okay.
they are sort of technical and boring, they are sort of the fundamentals and they're not the sexy stuff. And so they're the stuff fewer people talk about, but it is really important to know.
But I think a lot of people, and I get contacted really often about people wanting to start their own studios, and I'm really transparent about it. Because I think everybody needs to know the pitfalls and the ups, the highs and the lows and what it's really like, because I think oftentimes people have a really romantic notion of what it would be like in their head, and it's a lot of work. There is the messy business side of it that you need to really think about.
Yeah.
And when you're like me and you just like the fabric and you like the making, the business side is so hard
that's why
to wrap your head around.
Sure. And most people get into this because they're like you and they love to sew, they love to work with children, they love creating. And so some of these other things, like what happened, it sounds like with you, they just sort of get pushed to the back burner because you're like, I just, there's only so much time in a day and I don't want to work on that. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so you moved out of your house, and what were you looking for? It sounds like you've gone through several studios that are outside of your house at this point and are moving. It sounds like pretty soon. But what were you looking for in a studio when you did first move out of your house? Like, what did you need? What was important?
It was important for me to have a really big, wide open space. That was what I needed. I didn't want a space with a million different rooms at that time. I just wanted a big, open, white space that could be like just a creative dream. I wanted really good lighting. And we found it. We found this amazing space, and my good friend was looking for a space to run her business out of. So we shared this really big, gorgeous, open space, and she ran her business out of half of it. And then I taught classes out of the other half. And it was really the ideal first space for us. The light was magnificent. We did a lot of my book photography in there because it was so great. And it was really wonderful, but it did have a downfall, and that was that it had an elevator. And I never realized how many people were scared of elevators. So that proved to be kind of a big problem.
So you were up on a floor.
On the third floor,
On the third floor. And so in order to access your classroom space, you had to take the elevator.
You had to take the elevator. There was stairs, but it went through a legal office. So they would have to walk through a legal office. And, architecturally, the building, I'm still in the building, but architecturally that space was magnificent, but it was just not, I couldn't make it work for kids. Had a very old elevator, and children got very scared of the elevator, and that was a problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
again, like kind of not the most obvious thing to think about, but That is an important part of it.
Yeah.
Like, how are students going to access your space, and what is going to be in their way, and how hard is that going to be? That's important.
Absolutely, because there are a lot of parents that have really big elevator phobias that I never realized that people had.
Wow, you learned all about it.
Now it makes total sense.
Yeah.
And claustrophobia as well.
Sure.
And they just would not be able to come up at all.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you moved, and so now the new space that you're going to be moving to, what do you
hopefully
like okay, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, Abby.
What are you looking for today? So this has been a few years now, 7 years that you've been doing this, and you've got lots of experience behind you, and I bet you look at real estate with a whole new set of eyes. So what are you looking at now?
Okay, what I want now is somewhere with an outdoor space. We've been doing a lot of, I'm really interested in pursuing natural dyeing with the kids. We've been doing some shibori this summer, which is hard in a parking lot. So I'm looking for an outdoor space. I'm looking for, a little veranda. I'm looking for a freestanding house, basically, that I can have a separate office in. The hardest thing for me is because I do other work as well. In my current space, I have one big open space, but I always have to pack away my work when students come in. So I'd like to have a space where I can work on my own projects and then have a really dedicated teaching space as well.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds ideal. Okay.
Yep.
That's good to hear. And how many classes, in a day or in a week are you teaching? Like, what is the teaching schedule look like at Little Pincushion Studio right now?
Well, during the school year, it's 2 classes a day after school, from Monday through Saturday. And then on Saturday mornings, we do Saturday mornings. And then usually workshop schedule is I might do a workshop every month or 2 workshops every month. And then I'll take the trailer out usually once a month for a party. But I'm hoping to just change my schedule a little bit to have a little bit more time off because I work every day at the moment.
That's almost every day of the week. Do you, and are you personally teaching all of those classes?
Yes, it's only me.
Okay. And you don't have, and it sounded like you had some assistants who were former students who've come up with you, but do you have any actual employees, full-time or part-time employees who help?
I have no employees. I do it all myself. I have high school students that are helping me at the moment, and I have someone who's going to be starting, in kind of an assistant role after school every day of the week during the school year, and that's going to really help me with sort of the paperwork and the boring stuff and the emailing and all of that. But I just haven't been able to really find the right person to come and work here. I think it's really hard to find people that have kind of the same sensibility as you and, approach sewing the same way. And so, and I live kind of in a smallish town, so I haven't really come across a lot of people. I have started having teachers come in and teach other things just independently in the space when I'm not in here. But for sewing classes, I haven't yet found the perfect fit.
Okay. And so how are the classes structured? So I teach an adult class here locally in Wellesley, where I live, and it's actually taught at a kids sewing center called So Easy, and all the other classes are for kids. But I teach the moms who they get the sewing machine for the child for Christmas or for a birthday, and then the child's at home and needs help, and then mom's like, oops, I don't remember how to use this, or I never learned, and so they bring in the sewing machine, and I teach the parents how to use them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's great. I've been doing it for I want to say 5 years now, and I love doing it. But as a result of teaching in this space, I've come to know how those kids' classes are structured. So I'm curious to know, for your classes, is it one of those things where we're all going to be sewing a skirt, or we're all making this teddy bear, for example, or do you have a whole library of projects and everyone's working on a different thing? How do you structure that?
It's different all the time. I mean, I know all the kids, and I form classes based on who the kids are and ages. And usually I maybe only get, each school year I might get another 10 or 15 new children, but generally the children that I had last year will be coming back this year. They tend to move on only when they become older teenagers. And so the way we do it is the classes run in like a session, and each session is 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, I will usually have maybe 3 or 4 projects that I definitely want to do, that are definitely going to be skill builders that they are all going to do. And then a lot of the rest of the time, we talk as a group about what they want to make, and we'll write a list for each class. And then I have a basket for each class day, and I bulldog clip on there what all the kind of wish lists of things they want to make are. And usually everyone has to agree, and sometimes there's a bit of back and forth, and sometimes we'll come to an agreement. Because sometimes I want them to choose something and us to work together, either to work out how to do it, or if we're making our own pattern to do that, we work together as a group to do that. Or, I pull out Pinterest and we're looking through and they're telling me, what they're really into at the moment. And so that's kind of how I do it.
I see. Okay. And are you using commercial patterns? Like, are you getting, a pattern from Simplicity? Are you making up all your own patterns? Are you using indie patterns?
Sometimes I use patterns, but not all the time. I usually am that person who looks at it and then maybe changes it up. So I come up with a lot of my own patterns. We work from my books a lot, especially when I get new girls in the class. And we do sometimes work with some indie patterns for clothing, but I don't do a ton of clothing with kids. But it's really a mix. I mean, not all commercial. I like to do a lot of my own stuff.
Okay. And I know at the center where I teach, they have, if you're a new student, so if this is your first class, everyone's mixed together, but they actually end up having to come a little bit early, and they all make, I think it's a drawstring, maybe a pillow first and then a drawstring bag, just to learn to use the machine. Yep. And because they've never used the sewing machine before at all. And so they just have to learn, like, how does the needle work? How does the, what is a bobbin? So do you have something like that, like a first project that everyone kind of has to graduate through?
Yes, absolutely. I have, if someone wants to enter regular classes once they've already started and they want to join a class, they have to come and do a beginner workshop. And in that workshop, they learn how to use the sewing machine. They learn about sewing safety. They do some practice work and learn how to sew, what a seam allowance is, and how to sew with the edge of the foot on the edge of the fabric, and how to sew a straight line. And then they complete a little crossbody bag, which kind of covers all those skills that they've just learnt, and, pinning and cutting and all of that kind of thing. And sometimes if we don't do that, sometimes they'll make a pillow or like a big patchwork pillow. And then once I, feel like they have those skills, then they can join a class. That's generally how it works. And those girls also complete a certificate, and I call it a bobinology certificate. I just made that up. But they all become certified bobinologists once they have threaded the machine and threaded the bobbin themselves. So we do a little test. Okay. And once they've passed the test, they get the certificate, and we have like a whole ceremony type thing.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. And then as far as like, I know it, so again, I'm just speaking from my experience at the sewing studio where I work. There's also like chores that the woman who owns the sewing studio has made for the students. So like toward the end of class, like one person's in charge of winding bobbins, and one person's in charge of like putting all the pins away. They have like these magnetic pin wands, and they go around and collect them all. And anyway, do you have something like that sort of to help them to take responsibility for the space?
Exactly that, with the magnetic pin wands. And someone gets scissors, someone gets the pins off the floor, someone sweeps. Yeah, we always do that. I mean, it's hard sometimes, and my new classes in the fall are going to have a little bit of extra time. I'm adding about 10 minutes onto the classes so that we make sure that I teach them, because I am teaching them to be respectful of not only my space, but to learn to be respectful of their own sewing spaces at home. And of the equipment as well, and how important it is to take care of the machines and how to respect fabric. That's really important to me, so I do teach them that.
Yeah, I think that is important. It's a big part of it. Is like, you have to realize that, these things cost money, and and this is also a space used by other people after you, and that sort of thing. So that's great.
Yeah.
And do you have the kids cut out all of their own projects? In other words, do they do all of the cutting and all of the pinning? Do they do all the steps from start to finish, or are there steps that you sort of intervene in?
It depends on the project, and it depends entirely on how old they are. So sometimes I have them do the cutting, but cutting can be really challenging for children, even though it sounds like it would be the easiest thing in the world. I mean, as you know, I'm sure, they have a really hard time with it. Kids have a hard time with scissors. So some projects, especially more fine detail projects, I'll do the cutting, but they do all their own pinning. And every other step.
Okay, yeah. And so same at the sewing studio where I work, they do the cutting for the children.
Yeah.
And I always sort of wondered, like, is that the way, is there a reason for that? But it sounds like that you're in agreement that doing the cutting, and especially when accuracy is required, it is often too hard, especially for the younger children.
You want kids to take home things that they're really, really proud that they've made. And as much as I encourage children to express themselves through the things that they make, they also get so disappointed if it doesn't come out the way they'd planned. And it's okay if it's a little bit wonky and a little bit crazy, but sometimes the cutting is so way off if you let them do it that it almost can't even be usable. So if you can, depending on what you're making, if you can just get rid of that stage and give them the rest of it, then they're going to come out with a finished product that they're really proud of.
Right. I think that's important to hear. And what about ironing? So at the place where I work, they only have one iron. And I'm always like, wow, because they actually have pretty large class sizes at times.
Yeah.
And, but there's only one iron. And I asked once and they said, well, we don't let the students iron. We do all of the ironing. So I just wondered, or at least most of it, maybe they let some of the older students iron at this point. I don't know. But do you have many irons and let everybody iron, or how do you work that?
I have 2 irons and I let everybody iron. And the reason that I let the younger girls do it is that I have those. Is the brand Oliso?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have those irons, so no one ever has to worry about standing them up.
Right. So just to clarify, these are irons where you set them down, and when you're done using them, they kind of like
they pop up.
They pop up like little feet, and so that they're not going to burn the surface.
Right, and they're activated by your hand. So when you put your hand on the handle, they drop down. And those are fantastic for children.
Oh, good to know.
They're a little bit more expensive, and they are a little heavy, but in terms of safety, I have not had one problem with those at all. And so I have one long ironing board, and I have 2 irons on that. I just have one area for ironing because I like to be able to keep my eye on them and not have ironing boards all over the place. So I just kind of have one ironing station and then those irons going.
That is, yeah, I think that's a great tip. Are there any other like tips that stand out to you that if you were, advising somebody who was going to be teaching a class full of children how to sew on a sewing machine, how to make a particular project or something like that, you're like, wow, I this is a random thing, but this really has helped me a lot. Any good tips?
Well, I just rename everything on a sewing machine. I think that's my biggest tip, is that for me, trying to get too technical with the names of all the parts of the sewing machine with younger children, they just completely tune out. So we kind of make a game of the names of the parts of a sewing machine so that when I'm telling them to do something, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So, a presser foot and a foot pedal can be very confusing when you say put the foot down. Then they might put their foot on the foot pedal instead of on the, putting the presser foot is the chicken foot. They love that because it looks like some kind of crazy robot chicken foot. And the thread take up lever, that is the part that often gets unthreaded, and they often forget to thread it. We call that the groundhog in the cave, and you got to bring the groundhog up to see the sunlight.
Okay, and we call that the goose head.
Do you? Yeah. Sometimes we call it the caveman as well. It depends. It's like bring the silver caveman up. And it sounds wacky,
right?
But it really works for them.
And even like, when you're threading to wind a bobbin, there's the little tension discs that the thread has to pass through in order to go into the bobbin, and we call that the belly button.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
right. And all of these things I think those are great. They're important. And I'm sure when you first started sewing, you didn't really have those terms.
Right.
But over time, you've invented them because they just help kids identify and clarify what they're doing.
Yeah. I also use washi tape, and I'll stick washi tape all over the sewing machine with, like thread it here first, or because sometimes children, they're so visual that even though there's a thread guide on the sewing machine, sometimes they need to like read it. It needs to say it like with, in someone's handwriting, and then they get it. So quite often I will just stick washi tape all over the machine just to get them started. And also with their machines that they bring in to learn how to use them, I will do that for them to take it home like that, so that they remember. And then when they've gotten to the point where they feel really comfortable threading and doing everything, then they can take them off and, they've graduated. So I find that really helps.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about machines. So I have two questions. One is first about the machines that you purchase for the classroom, and the one that you would recommend for, to purchase for students, because there's so many machines in the market, and I think it's tempting, especially if you're not teaching in a classroom setting, but you just have one child or a grandchild, and you just, maybe buy like this sort of, it's almost like, it's not a toy, but it's like a kid's machine,
I hate them.
I hate them too. I agree. And if you don't want to do that, maybe you can say a few words about why you hate them, and then what would you recommend, either for them or for a classroom setting?
Right. Well, I have two different machines that I like. I had the Brother CS 6000i. I had them for the studio. They're very lightweight, computerized machine, very affordable, really, really, really slow speed control, which is fantastic. And they retail, I think, on Amazon at about $145. So if you're starting off a studio, they're a great option, a cheaper option. But I did just upgrade. I was not planning on it, but I was at Quilt Market and I saw these fantastic machines, and it was like the whole world lit up and the angels were singing. And
that's a good machine.
And I was like, what is that? And this is this brand of machine called Eversewn. They're a totally adorable sewing machine with a little bird on them. They look fantastic. They're very easy to use. They're extremely heavy, which I love, because that's the problem with the Brother. The Brother is so lightweight that the children, when they lean on the extension table, can sometimes knock the machine over.
And that's one of the same problems with the kiddie machines.
Yeah, totally. And so I thought, I'm going to take my Brother machines, I'm going to put them in my trailer, and I'm going to replace them with the Eversewn. So I love them. They are so quiet. They are very, very smooth. So many stitch options, but the easiest bobbin to thread. They're so easy to thread. They've got really great diagrams on how to thread them, and the children really love them.
That's great. Okay, we are definitely going to link to this machine so that people can take a look at it, and hopefully maybe I can even find a picture of one so people can see how they look too, because it sounds like they look good.
I always had a dream that I wanted to design a sewing machine for children that could take them through to adulthood.
Okay, that's a great idea, but this is maybe it.
And this is it. Yeah.
Wow.
It's cute. It's great for kids, great speed control, and will take them through to adulthood for sure.
Wow. That's great. And are you working through the dealer to get these? I mean, are you buying them on Amazon, or are you working through? Okay.
Yeah, I'm working through a dealer. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's another good suggestion too for people who want to be, buying in bulk, that you should work through a dealer rather than buying them retail. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And also getting them serviced, right? Because they get a lot of wear and tear, maybe more so than a regular machine would.
Yes, and for just basic cleaning, I usually hire my teenage son to come. He puts his headphones on and just comes and cleans everything for me, once a month, unless they need more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good tip too. And my other question was about, you had mentioned that when students bring their own machine in so that they can learn, sometimes you put the washi tape on it.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the things that I've struggled with a little bit at the sewing center where I teach, which is what I was saying earlier. The students learn on the machines that are at the sewing center, and they don't bring their own machine in. And so often they'll actually purchase the same one so that they have some consistency between the class and home. But sometimes, they'll have grandma's machine, or mom will just buy a different one, or, grandma will buy one for Christmas and she didn't know which kind to get. And so they have a totally different brand. And, all sewing machines are basically the same, but they also all have their little idiosyncrasies. And so sometimes they get home and they literally can't figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it sounds like you've come up with some way for them to bring their one from home in and get a lesson.
I usually ask them to come in before class, 15 minutes before class, and we'll run over how to thread it. And usually they know how to sew. So it's just a matter of teaching them how to thread it. But I really am trying to, open everyone's eyes up to the internet and YouTube, because pretty much you can get a video on how to thread any machine on YouTube. So I'll send them back with, instructions to jump on YouTube, and we'll have a little mini lesson on how to work their own machine. But that's generally how it is, how it works here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's important for people to hear too. So, so let's talk a little bit about Penelope. You've mentioned this trailer a couple of times, and I'm sure people are curious about what you're talking about. So you have this trailer named Penelope, and it is the coolest looking thing I have ever seen. Plus, it's just such an amazing concept. So tell us what it is and how you use it, what it looks like, all the good stuff.
Well, it's a little reproduction of a Shasta. I think it's a Shasta Air Flight trailer, and it's pink to match my logo. And I teach children out of it. I do birthday parties out of it and pull it behind the car. And I had always kind of thought, wouldn't that be cool? That's just the coolest idea. I'd love to do that one day. I mean, it'll probably never happen, but I'd like to do it. And I would always be on Craigslist, and I would always stop when I saw a vintage trailer for sale on the side of the road. And it got to this point where they became so hot that I could not find anything anywhere. And I don't know, it was kind of like, I think I'd love to do it, but I wasn't sure that I would ever actually do it. And then I came across this guy who was reproducing them down in North Carolina, kind of Tennessee border, and maybe it's Georgia and Tennessee. Anyway, he just does the most incredible job of these trailers, and I started a conversation with him about it, and then I was fully not intending to do it, but then I was like, I have to do it. It's going to be great. I always bring it up to my students and their parents as well and say, what do you think about this idea? Do you think this would work? So everyone was really enthusiastic about it. And so he built it for me. And
did he build it custom inside so that it would be to your spec?
No, he built it so that the walls and everything were finished inside. It was just plain raw wood paneled with a laminate checkerboard floor. That's how I got it. And then the next few months, I sketched out how I wanted it to be inside, and my husband completely built it out for me exactly how I wanted it.
And so what is inside of it? So I'll post a picture because you have a picture on your site so we can see it. But for people who aren't looking at that right now because they're at the gym or whatever, just tell us a little bit about what it looks like in there.
That's okay. So when you go in the door to the right-hand side, there's spanning the width of it is most of the width of it is a bench with pillows on it. And under that bench is where I store all the sewing machines. It's kind of got a pop-open top. And then beside that, I have shelving with a little lip on the front, so that keeps everything in. And I have stacks of fabric always in there. And then I have some little shelves where I keep yarn. We've tried to think of things that are not going to fall down when we're pulling it. And then we have spanning a large amount of the length of it down one side is a kind of a narrowish work table bench type thing with attached by brackets underneath so that they can get their legs underneath. And then I just have stools, and then on the other side, and all the work area is underneath a big vending window. It's a huge window, so they have heaps of light. And then on the other side, I have air conditioning in there, an air conditioning unit. So we built a box around that, and on top of that box, we put a cutting mat and a little ironing pad. And so it's plenty of space. I can easily have 5 children in there going at the same time. I do have a generator, but I tend not to use it. We generally plug in when we go to someone's house. We'll plug into their power supply. And it works really well.
Yeah, so you just pull up the parties from 2 to 4. You pull up and park in the driveway or right out front, and the kids arrive. They go in the trailer and they sew. And
they love it. They have the best time in there, and it's fun for the parents, and it's such a novelty for them. But they still have heaps of room to be able to maneuver their work. And for parties, I do prep everything. So I don't have them cutting anything. I prep a lot
because
in
some
advance.
Of those kids maybe have never sewn. You might have a cousin visiting or something like that who doesn't live in town and has no familiarity at all. So this is going to be their first go. Yep.
So it works out really well. The only thing I haven't mastered is backing it up. So my husband has to come with me every time I do a party, and he puts his bike in the trailer, and he's usually researched the trails in the area, and so he will back it up for me, and then he'll go off bike riding.
That's amazing.
I know. He's going to get tired of that at some point. He keeps trying to make me learn, but I'm very fearful.
It's a little scary. Yeah, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. You don't want to. Yeah, exactly. But that just sounds amazing. I mean, I want you to come to my house. That sounds so. That sounds so amazing. So
it's really, really. I really enjoy doing it.
Have adults. So some of the parents of these kids asked to learn to sew. And have you taught adults, and how are you feeling about that?
I generally don't teach adults sewing. I do teach adult macrame and weaving and other craft things. I guess I've kind of always wanted to stick to what I'm good at, and and what I really love. And it's nothing against adults at all, but I just really focus on what I'm good at, and that is teaching children. And so I've always stuck with that. I know a lot of people with studios in the local area that teach adults, and I'm always happy to send them their way. But for me, someone once said to me, you should stick to that one thing that you know that you can do well, and that you really love. And that's what I love. I feel that I can relate really well to children, and that's what makes me the happiest. So I haven't really branched out to teaching adult sewing.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot of parents that want me to come with the trailer and teach weaving in the trailer on a Saturday night. So I think that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your love of weaving. Weaving's had just such a massive comeback, I feel like, right now. And I know that you've done some teaching of weaving at different like retreats and that sort of thing. So tell us a little bit about kind of how you got back into weaving. And I know you have a Creative Bug class on weaving.
I always loved looking at everyone's weaving. And I thought, because I'm the kind of person that I see something and I must learn how to do it immediately. So I did a lot of research, and I got a lot of books, and I bought every vintage book I could find, and just looked at a lot of stuff and learned. I went to a really basic weaving workshop in Brooklyn. I can't remember how long ago that was, maybe a couple of years ago, and really loved it. And so that's how I started doing it, and I was just really doing it for fun for myself. And then I think maybe it might have been one of the Heather Ross weekend workshops. I thought that would be a really great fun thing to teach, and so that was really successful. And I started teaching a bit here, and then was getting asked to travel to teach weaving a little bit more. So, tapestry weaving. So that's kind of how I started, and I really love it. I love the texture and the color, and and all of that.
Yeah, and I like that you're so open-minded to saying, like, I'm going to get into natural dyeing and shibori and weaving and, sort of expand out, not to focus on things that you don't truly love or a population you don't truly love, but to sort of decide to follow your own interests and develop those into something that could be part of your business.
And then the kids see it, and, I'll hang something up that I've made, and the kids will see it, and then they'll be really, really wanting to learn it. And I love that. And I love that then I can teach them something new. And, a really modern version of, macrame. Kids love it.
Yeah.
They're totally into it. It's so fun. So, I feel like I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly going to workshops so that I can learn more, so that I can teach these kids all these awesome crafts. And that's just, I feel lucky that I have a job that I can do that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
But the weaving for Creative Bug was really fun, and it was a really fun way to sort of share how obsessed I am with it with all the Creative Bug people. So
let's talk about Creative Bug a little bit. Is that experience of filming an online class comparable to the other kinds of teaching that you've done for so many years, or are there things about it that really stand out as being somewhat different? And how are you feeling about the video component of teaching?
I am so thankful to have those videos, and I am so thankful, to work for a company like Creative Bug. It's been a really fantastic experience. And, I was so terrified when I started. In fact, I'm terrified every time I do it. I'm still terrified. But they're just an amazing group of people, and the quality of their videos is so beautiful. And I love that I can send, my students in that direction. If they can't come to a weaving class, but they really, really want to learn how to do that, and I can send them to that. I think that's such a bonus. And I love the idea of videos. Absolutely love it. If there was a way that I could do it here in my studio, if I was set up for that, I would love to do it, because I think kids are super, super visual. They're always on their iPad. They love to watch how to make things. So, I think it's a really great way of teaching for sure.
Yeah, and it really adds so much to your brand, because you have that, and then you have these We Love to Sew books with C&T, of which there's 4 now. Is that right?
Yep.
That's amazing. And then they, your students and families just must be so impressed by not only those things, but now your fabric line with Wyndham, and that must just be so exciting for them and for you.
It's I still can't believe it, to be honest. I look at it and I'm like, how did that happen? And I love that the kids I have it all on the shelf, and that's what the kids sew with, because they love it. They get to choose from any, I have a wall of fabric, and that's what they love to sew with that fabric. And that makes me happy that they love the fabric that I've designed, and that their mothers love it too for themselves. And I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to work with such a great company as Wyndham. And it was a really fun experience. It was something I'd never done before, and I'd never really considered myself an artist. So it was another challenge that I could set myself. It was like, right, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try drawing. I don't know if I can do it. And it was really satisfying to do it all myself.
Did you connect? Like, how did you connect with them?
I had met them on a couple of occasions. I had met them at market. I had met them through my friend Heather Ross, and really liked them. And I liked what they were doing in fabric, and I liked that they were a slightly smaller company. And I really just loved the quality of their fabric. And so I was really excited to work with them and to show them my designs. And so it was great. I'm so glad they love them.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
And I just want to quickly get to, you have 2 recommendations. One of them was, the third one was the Eversewn sewing machine, which we already got to. But you wanted to recommend a book that I also love, which is by Sherry Lynn Wood, The Improv Handbook. And Sherry was on the podcast many moons, like a couple of months ago. But she's wonderful. And what do you love so much about her book?
It was, when I found it, when I saw it, it was like, okay, so I can do this. Like, so people are, it's not just me who loves this style of quilting. And I love all of her quilts. I think they're visually so beautiful. I'm not a big rule follower, and I get so stressed when I have to follow a pattern sometimes, because I'm just so hard on myself, about if everything's perfect. And my, ideal of making a quilt or patchwork is kind of just being really free with it. So that's what I love about her book. I mean, what's not to love, really?
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with it. And I love that it's a way that I can open a dialogue with children about what is quilting and what is patchwork, and, what it means to them and how they can put fabrics together and it can be okay, and how they can experiment and it can be beautiful. And I'm really excited about it. I'm so glad I found it. I've been so busy the last couple of years that I hadn't been looking at all the books that were out there. And when I came across it, I was just totally thrilled.
Yeah.
And I show them. And
it's totally different from anything you've seen before. And it gives you permission to be yourself and to not have to cut everything in a straight line, not use a ruler, to sort of use your intuition. And
Right.
I just so appreciate that.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. So it's been fun doing some projects with the children with that kind of freedom. So it's been great. It's a great book. So I would recommend it.
Yeah, me too. And your last one is actually a knitting recommendation. You're making the Pearl Soho seed stitch wrap.
That's just the thing I'm obsessed with at the moment. I'm not a knitter. I've always been terrified of knitting, and I've always thought I was really terrible at it and that I wouldn't have the patience for it. So I discovered this wrap and have been knitting it all summer. And it's my summer addiction. And I think if anyone's looking for a really easy, beautiful thing to knit, this is it. And it will probably take me until Christmas to finish it. But for me, I always have to have my hands busy, and it's really hard for me to not continually be in my studio working on some new thing, because I feel like I'm an obsessive, compulsive crafter of all things. And so it keeps me at home just sitting quietly, and it keeps my hands busy. And I think it's a really great pattern for someone who really doesn't know how to knit, but who wants to learn.
Perfect. Well, Annabel, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the While She Naps podcast. It's been so terrific talking with you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And if people want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to reach you online? Where should they go?
They can go to my website, which is littlepincushionstudio.com. And my personal email details are on there, and they can feel free to reach out, or you can contact me through Instagram, and that's at Little Pincushion Studio. And feel free to reach out to me there. I'm happy to help anyone, answer any questions. If anyone wants to, call me up and talk about starting a studio, I'm happy to have a chat.
Oh, that's really generous of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Abby.
You've been listening to the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Visit my blog, whileshenaps.com, where you can subscribe to my email newsletter to get the best in sewing, blogging, and small business delivered right to your inbox each week. And I encourage you to check out today's show sponsor, Art Street Collective. Visit artstreetcollective.com to find books and DVDs on surface design, art quilting, bead embellishments, and more by some of today's top fiber and quilt artists. Thank you, Art Street Collective. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.